Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Combs, and today I want to talk about structuring your essays. I want to look at the essay as a whole, and then I want to focus in particular on the thesis statement. A thesis statement is basically the focus of your essay. It tells your readers exactly what you're going to talk about. And we'll talk more about how to write a thesis statement and what a thesis statement consists of in just a minute. But let's look at the essay as a whole. Usually when we talk about writing essays and the art of writing essays and arguments, we begin with the 5-paragraph essay. In its strictest form, the 5-paragraph essay can be outlined as follows. So it has 5 paragraphs, an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. The introduction has an attention getter or a hook, something that causes your reader to want to read on, to learn more. And you list your thesis statement in the introduction. And here I say that you have a 3-pronged thesis statement. A 3-pronged thesis statement means that you identify in the thesis statement 3 reasons why your idea about your topic is true. So, for example, let's say that I am a high school student writing for a school newspaper in support of school uniforms. I might say, as a thesis statement, we should wear school uniforms because they would reduce discipline issues, be cheaper than other clothing, and encourage school pride. So do you hear that those are 3 reasons why we should have school uniforms? Those are the 3 prongs of my 3-pronged thesis statement. So in an essay that I would write with that thesis statement, or beginning with that thesis statement, the first paragraph I would talk about how school uniforms would reduce discipline issues. In the second paragraph, I would talk about how school uniforms would be cheaper than other types of clothing. And in the third paragraph, I would talk about how school uniforms would encourage school pride. Now, in the conclusion of a 5-paragraph essay, you restate the thesis and summarize your main points, and then basically leave the reader with some comment that you make, some concluding statement. Now, as you look at this outline, you're probably thinking, well, this can get really boring really fast. And actually, a lot of times when writers are writing, they don't think about the 5-paragraph essay structure because it can be very limiting. I assume that you will have more than 5 paragraphs in your essays. I assume that sometimes in between the introduction and the first body paragraph, you'll have to have maybe a paragraph or 2 that gives a little bit of background so your readers can understand your argument. There's no room for that in the 5-paragraph essay structure. We're going to be looking not in this first essay, but in the second, third, and fourth essays that we will write. We'll be looking at counter arguments, or looking at people who argue the opposite of what we're arguing. And we're going to address those counter arguments in our essay. That will make our essay and our argument very much stronger than it would be without those. There's no room for that kind of thing in the 5-paragraph essay. So the 5-paragraph essay is very limiting, but all good writing follows this basic structure. All good writing has an introduction. It has paragraphs in the body that support the thesis statement from the introduction. And all good writing concludes with a statement that wraps things up for the reader. So I'm not going to expect you to write 5-paragraph essays. In fact, I don't want you to. But as you're pre-writing and as you are drafting, Thinking about this structure can help you organize your ideas so that your essay remains clear to the reader, and so the reader is not confused by your writing. If you don't have some sort of organizational pattern and some sort of structure, then your essay will just be sort of ramblings on, right? And your reader may be confused, they may lose interest, and your argument will not be as strong, and you will not get your point across. So I'm not expecting you to write 5-paragraph essays, but the 5-paragraph essay is a good place to start. You don't even have to have 3 prongs into your thesis statement. You could have 2 prongs. You could have 2 really good reasons why your thesis statement is true, and as long as you support those, that works. You can have 1 really good reason. You can have 8 really good reasons. You can have 4 really good reasons. So we don't have to adhere strictly to this 5-paragraph essay, but it's a good place to start when we're organizing our thoughts. And this next slide basically says that. The 5-paragraph essay structure can be limiting. For example, it leaves no room for considering counter-arguments to your claim and points of view other than your own. Because of the limitations, few writers of argument follow the structure of the 5-paragraph essay faithfully. It is, however, a good place to start when deciding how to structure your argument. While your essay will probably consist of more than 5 paragraphs and include information not called for in this structure, thinking of the 5-paragraph essay is a good way to organize your thoughts when you're in the pre-writing and drafting stage of the writing process. Now, even though we are not going to strictly adhere to the 5-paragraph format, the 5-paragraph essay points out some parts of essays that are very important that we need to focus on. First of all, introductions are important. In the introduction, you should establish your credibility with readers. Remember ethos. You should show that you are informed about the subject and that you are reasonable and fair. You should attempt to connect with the reader on some level, build some common ground. You should grab the reader's attention in some way. For example, use a startling fact or quotation, a vivid example, a narrative, think narrative as means, a question or an analogy, and you should state the thesis. Conclusions are also important. The conclusion of an essay can be relatively short, but it should remind readers of the essay's main points and perhaps leave the reader with something larger to consider. For example, a course of action. So let's say that I'm writing about elephants as an endangered species. Then after I show in my essay that elephants remain an endangered species, and that's a problem, then maybe my conclusion could suggest a course of action that we could all do to help save the elephants from extinction. You could also pose a question for further consideration. If you related an anecdote, if you use narrative as means in the introduction, you can return to that story in the conclusion. But in the conclusion, you want to avoid introducing a totally different idea. If you pose a question or you suggest a course of action, make sure that relates back to your thesis. You don't want to introduce anything that's very new in your conclusion, and you also don't want to make concessions. If you've had a strong essay where you are arguing for something passionately throughout, you don't want to say, well, this is not as important in the conclusion. You don't want to make concessions. You don't want to apologize for the argument. You want to end on a strong note as well. In the 5-paragraph essay structure, and in fact in all essays, support and evidence are also important. All evidence should support one or more of your argument points, and each point in your argument should directly relate to and support your thesis. So, perhaps the most important aspect of the 5-paragraph essay is the emphasis on the thesis statement. Now, you don't have to have a pronged thesis statement all the time. If you recall the school uniform thesis, I don't have to say we should wear school uniforms because they would reduce discipline issues, be cheaper than other clothing, and encourage school pride. Those might be the 3 things that I'm going to talk about in my paragraphs, but I could just simply say we should wear school uniforms, period. That could be my thesis because that lets the reader know exactly what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the reasons why I think we should have school uniforms. So the thesis statement does not always have to be pronged. It can be, but it doesn't always have to be. And in fact, sometimes what I like to do when I'm writing is I will write a pronged thesis statement that has all my reasons. That way I can refer back to it as I organize and structure my essay. But then before I publish the final draft, I'll remove those prongs and just have that thesis statement without the prongs. Either way is okay, and in some situations, prongs work better than in others. So, what is the thesis statement? Well, the thesis statement expresses the main point of your essay. We said that before. And it always consists of a topic and a controlling idea. So I wouldn't just say, for example, if we go back to elephants, I wouldn't just say, I'm going to write about everything you'd ever want to know about elephants. I'm going to talk about elephant anatomy. I'm going to talk about where elephants live. I'm going to talk about what they eat. I'm going to talk about the fact that they're endangered. I'm going to talk about the fact that they're being poachers are killing elephants for their tusks. I'm going to talk about, the fact that things have been put in place, protections have been put in place, initiatives have been started to save the elephant. Still not working. I'm not going to talk about all of that in my essay because I want my essay to be focused. So I need a controlling idea. So I might say something like, despite the many protections that have been put in place, elephant poaching is still a problem and the elephant remains an endangered species. So what I'm going to talk about in my essay is I'm going to talk about how the elephant is still an endangered species because of poaching. I'm not going to talk about any other aspect of elephants, just the fact that they remain an endangered species. So elephants is my topic. They're still an endangered species despite protections that have put in place. That's my controlling idea. So every thesis statement needs a topic and controlling idea. So let's consider the thesis statement we have here. By networking with friends, a single parent can manage to strike a balance among work, school, a social life, and family. So what's my topic here? Well, the topic here is how a single parent can have a balanced life. What's the controlling idea? The controlling idea is that it can be achieved through networking with friends. So in my essay, I'm not going to talk about any other way that single parents can have balanced lives. I'm only going to focus on working with friends or networking with friends. So if there are organizations out there, like government organizations or community organizations that can help single parents, I'm not going to talk about that in my essay. That still may be true. That may be something that is out there, but that's not the focus of my essay. The focus of my essay, my controlling idea, the idea that everything in my essay must relate back to, is that you can have a balance through networking with friends. So I'm only going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about how single parents can have a balance by believing in their own strength and standing alone, by using community organizations and community services. I'm going to talk about how single parents can have a balance in daily life by working with friends. That's the focus of my essay. Everything else doesn't fit into my controlling idea, to my thesis statement with my topic and controlling idea. Okay? So that's how you're going to remain focused, by focusing on this controlling idea. So let's talk about some characteristics of good thesis statements. So a good thesis statement should be specific. You should focus on one aspect of a single topic. You don't want to say something like, hunger has many causes and effects. Okay, good. Let's focus on one or a few of those causes and effects. Or let's focus on just causes, or let's focus on just effects. Hunger has many causes and effects. That's a little too broad for a thesis statement for an essay. I mean, you could write a book. You could write several books on this topic, right? So a better thesis statement in this case might be, hunger persists in Africa because jobs are scarce and farming in the infertile soil is rarely profitable. Okay, here we've even narrowed it down to just one country. Hunger has many causes. Well, hunger where? Hunger in America, hunger in Africa, hunger in, wherever. So here we've narrowed it down to just one continent. Hunger persists in Africa. So that's my topic. My topic is hunger in Africa. My controlling idea is that it persists because jobs are scarce and farming is rarely profitable, okay? So I might expect in this essay to hear about the job situation in Africa and how that affects hunger, and farming and how that affects hunger, right? I'm not going to hear about any other aspect of hunger in Africa. I'm going to hear about the scarcity of jobs and the fact that farming is not profitable. Also, a good thesis should take a stand on an issue. The thesis statement should never be a question, but the answer to a question. So you would never have a thesis statement that says, what are the positive and negative effects of the Atkins diet? Well, first of all, you don't want to talk about positive and negative effects. If you're arguing, you want to say something like the Atkins diet has many positive effects, or the positive effects outweigh the negative effects. Or you might want to say something like the Atkins diet's negative effects or negative aspects are not worth the little positive aspects of the diet, right? So you never want your thesis statement to be a question. It should be an answer to a question. So, for example, because the Atkins diet promotes rapid weight loss that results in the loss of muscle, it poses a potential danger to those who follow it. What is my controlling idea? What is my topic? The Atkins diet. The controlling idea, it poses a potential danger. So the Atkins diet is dangerous. That's my topic and controlling idea. And really, this is sort of a pronged thesis because two of the things I'm going to talk about is that the diet promotes rapid weight loss, and I'm going to talk about how that's dangerous. And I'm also going to talk about how it results in the loss of muscle and how that's dangerous. And in fact, if we go back up to the other thesis statement we had, hunger persists in Africa because jobs are scarce and farming in the infertile soil is rarely profitable. Hunger could be considered my topic. It persists is the controlling idea, and this could also be considered pronged because I have two prongs here. Jobs are scarce, farming is rarely profitable. So those are the two things that will prove that hunger persists. So you could think of it that way. You could consider it in that way as well. Also, a good thesis statement should be debatable and justify a discussion The debate must be relevant and cannot be based solely on opinion. So I wouldn't want to say something like drugs alter the body's natural functions, because that's not debatable. That is a fact. That's the definition basically of a drug, something that alters the body's natural functions. So there's no one who can argue with that. That's not debatable. That's a fact. So what I might say, marijuana, when used in moderation, has minimal harmful effects on the body. What's my topic? Marijuana. What is my controlling idea? It has minimal harmful effects on the body. So we've been told all this time that marijuana is this dangerous drug. Well, really, the dangers or the harmful effects are minimal. That's my controlling idea. That's definitely debatable. That's actually a topic for debate now, where we have several states that are legalizing marijuana for recreational use. All right, a thesis statement should also be reasonable, logical, and non-confrontational. Remember, you don't want to say, if you're not in support of abortion, for example, that whoever is a baby killer. That's confrontational. You don't want to do that. You want to be respectful. You want to be calm, reasonable, logical. So you wouldn't want to say the horrible, immoral doctors who practice the terrible crime of assisted suicide should be sentenced to death by the humane lethal injection method. So there's a lot of loaded words here. Horrible, immoral doctors. Terrible crime of assisted suicide. You don't, even if you're not in favor or even if you are against assisted suicide, you wouldn't want to phrase your thesis this way, because right away you're turning off those who are in support of assisted suicide, those who do see it as a valid option. You're turning them off right away. They're not going to listen to your argument, because you've already said that the doctors that practice this are horrible and immoral. It's a terrible crime. And so you've turned people off right away, and they will not read on and listen to your thesis or your essay. Sorry. So a better way to say that would be, it should be against the law for doctors to practice assisted suicide. That's very objective. That's basically saying the same thing that the other thesis statement said. It's just in a much less confrontational way. It's getting your point across without all of the added loaded words. And finally, your thesis statement should express one main idea and be manageable. You should be able to fully develop your argument about that idea in the space you have. So I wouldn't want to say companies need to exploit the marketing potential of the internet, and web pages can provide both advertising and customer support. Wow, that's a whole lot of stuff. Companies, maybe, would be my topic. One controlling idea is that companies need to exploit the marketing potential of the internet. Actually, web pages could be another topic. Or web pages can be web pages can provide both advertising and customer support. Could be another controlling idea for companies. So companies need to have web pages that can provide these things, advertising and customer support. There's too much going on in here. So what I might say instead is companies can use web pages to advertise, provide customer support, and manage the human resources department. So this is a thesis. I'm dealing with companies. The topic is how companies can use web pages. The controlling idea is that they can use web pages to advertise, provide customer support, and manage the human resource department. So that would be a much more manageable thesis statement. All right, so what I have here on these next slides is a list of thesis statements. And what I want you to do is maybe write a little bit in your journal and determine if each thesis statement is appropriate for an argument. If it is an appropriate thesis, identify the topic and the controlling idea. If it's not appropriate, then explain why. And look back to those characteristics of a good thesis when you explain why. Now, I'm going to ask you to do this in a discussion board post, so we're not going to take the time to do this now in this video. But look at I think the next 3 slides in this PowerPoint presentation, which I will have uploaded to Blackboard as well, right underneath this video. And you will have, so look at all of these, write about all of these, take some time to write about all of these, maybe in your journal. But I'm going to ask you to choose one to talk about in a discussion board post, okay? So let me go ahead and reveal these. All right, here are the works cited pages. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful and it gave you some ideas about the structure of a essay and the structure that we're going to use in this class, not necessarily the 5-paragraph essay, but we are going to use that as a starting point, and our essay will most likely develop from there into something that's not strictly a 5-paragraph essay, and that's great. That's actually what I want to happen. But we can start with that essay structure as a starting point. And I also hope that you have a good idea about what makes a strong thesis statement. We're going to very soon start writing our first essay, and I hope that you find this helpful as you begin structuring that essay and writing your thesis statement for that essay. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. And until next time.